Death Battle Season 10. What a fun adventure, with some of the highest highs of the show and some of the lowest lows. Originally, I was going to do a casual ranking video like people normally do, but Jonathan Frostithen's approach of reviewing the episodes in order has struck a chord with me, and I want to do that. So yeah, all credit goes to him, really. Let's get into Peak Battle Season 10. Ant-Man vs. Atom, personally speaking, was never one Marvel DC match I was dying to see. But I wouldn't be upset if it was announced. Now, would I have picked this as a premiere? Not really. But that's neither here nor there. It's a good matchup. But did the episode live up to the hype? Well, let's see. I dig both Ant-Man and Atom segments decently enough. I will say for the editing, this episode is really good. It's probably my favorite of the comic episodes at this time, but we shall see. The cutaway gag with Boomstick and the lab coat got a laugh out of me. Wiz getting so genuinely heated and confused over pizza is gold and probably one of my favorite jokes this season. That being said, yeah, I don't find anything outside of that funny. Not that it's unfunny, it's just not for me. Now for the fight. This fight is fun. I really want to focus on the size shenanigans because boy is it fun. The drinking bird bit is genuinely hilarious, which actually brings me to how good the set design is. It's so impressive to me that all of this is being animated on a very, very, very large 3D background, especially with how the objects move, like the Marvel and the Honda Civic. Once the fight goes into when they shrink into the little dimension is when it gets a little worse for me. The main thing is Atom's character assassination. The line about Ray Palmer destroying reality is really stupid to me, given the fact that he is a superhero scientist. If anything, Hank would be someone who would tend to risk things like that more than Atom. Outside of the Atom jumping on gun bit, I also just don't find the combat interesting at this point. It's just kind of happening and I don't really get as invested as I am in the beginning. Once the fight gets to overspace, I really enjoy the background. It's impressive to me that the little figure guy is hand-drawn because it looks really, really cool. The kill is also really, really good. Probably one of, if not the best kill this season. So yeah, episode is decent enough. I don't think it should have been the premiere, but we will get into that later. Good editing and fight, but what mainly brings it down is the second half of the fight. Most of the jokes, and Atom's character assassination. 7 out of 10. This episode, when it was announced, was not one I was particularly excited for. I knew Liam was a major fan of the matchup and both series, so I had a feeling it was going to be good. I just didn't expect to love it as much as I did. So why did I enjoy it so much? Well, let's see. The analysis for this episode is great. It goes really in depth for the lore of both worlds. With Chosen Undead's analysis, they start off in a really dark tone, which fits how twisted and depressing its world is. However, it doesn't linger on it too much to where it's boring to watch. It's also very funny. I know people really dislike Dark Souls memes from like 2013, but I don't really care, man. The roll joke will forever be funny to me, and Boomstick saying get good was a must for the episode, so I'm glad they had him do it. Jocelyn showing up at the end to explain the true story of Dark Souls is also really good. It leaves an impression. As for the Dragonborn's analysis, I like how they take a more adventurous tone here, as opposed to the darkness of Dark Souls, and they use the mods, so it's a 10 out of 10. But no, seriously, really good opener. It's also just as funny. Blessed by Todd Howard and the cheese joke is great, and while this analysis is still great, I prefer the Dark Souls analysis just a slight before. Still very good. The fight, I ranted hard about it in my opening thoughts video, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the biggest reason as to why is the track. For those who don't know, Brandon Yates, the artist of this track, got a bunch of DB fans for a fan choir of this episode specifically. And it's so fucking good. Literally not a single complaint for me track-wise. It fits both the fight and the characters well. It's an adventurous track filled with mythological edges, and it's great. But don't let that discredit the fight. It is so much fun. The setup with Chosen Undead set to link the fire while Dragonborn is going to plunge the world into darkness is an easy way to give them opposing sides. It's also just really cool. Tom Schalk is great in playing the two snakes, even though they are the same voice. It really makes the fight interesting from the start. Now, people really like to complain about Dragonborn's model and the roll bit, and personally speaking, I disagree with both of these. While I think Dragonborn could be a bit buffer, Dragonborn can look like this in the game, so it's not a deal breaker for me. As for the roll bit, people who complain about it probably haven't seen or played both games, because this is how combat works in both games. The roll fits the dodging-centered combat of Dark Souls, and the Dragonborn swings casually, which is what he does in first person on Skyrim, so it works. The escalation in this fight is immaculate. Starting out from their more smaller weapons, like arrows and normal swords, I especially like the arrow and the knee bit, by the way, to the dragon summon and the chosen undead grabbing the lightning out of the air. It's so sick. On a fundamental level, it's awesome. I do not care for any counter-arguments. Finally, we get the final clash with the Moonlit Greatsword, and I love it. It's so cool. So cool. The final clash with the swords is so sick. While I don't really understand Chosen Undead speaking, I can't really complain. It's still very cool. The ending is fun and unique. It fits both characters that are set in the fight well, and I can't really complain. I truthfully mean it when I don't have any complaints for this episode. I love it all around. Liam knocked it out of the park. I really hope they do more high fantasy episodes like this and Sauron vs. Lich King in the future.
Call me biased, I don't care. 9 out of 10.
Okay, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I audibly groaned when this was announced. I was very not familiar with other characters outside of Killua being in Jump Force, and I originally thought Misaka was some Doki Doki Literature Club character I've never heard of, so I wasn't particularly excited for this episode. But what did I think when it came out? This episode's analysis, personally speaking, is really boring to me, and that's not supposed to be an insult to the team or anything, I'm just not heavily invested. I also think the music used is weird personally, but that's really subjective. Although I will say I love the references. Always Sunny and Genshin Impact is used in the footage, and they reference Killua's gay romance with Gon, so honestly we all win. Fight is decent. To be quite honest, I'm not really into the rigging. I know both had sprites that clashed hard, so either way they were going to end up having to make customs for either. And it appears Killua was the main guy worked on in terms of sprites, and personally speaking he looks weird to me, both when he stands and moves. I don't mean to undermine the team's work or anything, but personally speaking, it's just not for me. However, I do like some aspects of the fight, like the track. It's a simple jam that I can get into whenever I'm feeling some casual music. I like the strategy usage in the fight as well. It fits the world of Hunter x Hunter especially, and the voice acting is good. Both actresses fit their roles very well. Oh, and the hand-drawn stuff is awesome. The kaiju shooting a bolt only for Killua to jump on it and disrupt the creature is so cool looking. I really hope we get to see more creative hand-drawn shots like that in the future. What mainly holds this episode back for me is a lack of interest in the matchup, the rigging and the analysis being a slog to get through. More power to you if you like it though. Definitely not a bad episode by any means. 6 out of 10. Now this was an episode I was excited for. Not overwhelmingly so, but I was definitely excited to see the Guardians on the show. I also have a lot of nostalgic attachment to Lilo and Stitch, so I was definitely intrigued. At the time of this episode's release, I was completely and utterly on Rocket's side in terms of bets and routes. So did this episode sway me? Let's see. The analysis for this episode I'm very mixed on. I love Stitch's segments. It's very fun. The Hawaiian music as Wiz and Boomstick discuss all of Lilo and Stitch is so nostalgic to me. Like I said, I have a lot of nostalgia for that film, so it's very fun to reminisce about. I love the cutaway gag where Boomstick just fucking leaves. That got a kick out of me. And Dummy's back, so yay! The ending to it is also great. I love that they talk about how Stitch and his family are really connected. As for Rockets, yeah, this is probably going to be a hot take. I do not like this analysis outside of one joke. That being the joke with how many exes he has. I also do kind of like when they mention the Guardians, which actually leads me to my biggest problems. They focus way too much on Rocket's pre-Guardian life, which I really don't care for because it's such a non-factor of his character nowadays. They spend the opening on it and only really mention the Guardians for a short moment before getting into all of his stuff. The ending also has this problem where it's very anticlimactic to me. It's just, boy, you sure don't want to mess with this guy! As opposed to discussing how Rocket joining the Guardians and meeting Groot changed him for the better after a massive tragedy. If you argue that is a tone clash, I'm just going to say, nuh-uh, because I literally do that in Stitch's analysis with his family. So yeah, very mixed on the analysis. What about the fight? Well, originally I used to hate it, but I actually think it's kind of good on rewatch. It uses their characters very well. They act in character, and that's carried even further by the performances. Both actors sound nearly identical to their character, and it's actually scary. Jailhouse Rocket is an absolute banger and one of the best tracks this season. Love it through and through. Jokes used in the fight like Rocket throwing up thanks to Stitch's space insult and Stitch getting humbled by the traps are really funny. Albeit, I think the trap bit goes on a bit too long. They also do a lot in terms of shots, like Stitch riding the wave. It's very cool. My main issue with the fight is how short it is. It feels over too quickly, when there was so much more they could have done with gunplay and what have you. They also, in my opinion, kind of mischaracterize Rocket. In the animation, Rocket gives this whole-ass speech on the weapon he's going to use to kill Stitch. Is he stupid? Does he not realize that Stitch isn't deaf? That's so weird to me. Why would you give away your main fucking strategy in a fight? I don't get that, personally speaking. I can safely give this episode a 7 out of 10, which is shocking, because originally I hated this episode. What holds it back is its short fight and bad Rocket analysis. Okay, so this episode, upon its announcement, had me hyped as fuck. Darth Vader is one of the best fictional characters ever conceived, and I like Obito decently enough. Plus, this was a sequel to one of my favorite death battles ever with Obi-Wan vs. Kakashi. So this had a lot to live up to. Did it? Yes and no. Let's talk about it. Okay, so analysis-wise, shockingly, I don't have much to say other than the editing being superb. I don't really have any complaints outside of maybe Obito's analysis dragging, but it's not significant enough to bother me. The fight is just genuinely peak. I'm not going to go into a full analysis because GalacticAttorney already did that in his video, and I think I couldn't give it that much justice, so go watch his video on it for an analysis. For what I like, I really dig the track. That's No Moon is an absolutely triumphant but melancholy track that I love. It's simple and fits both characters. You really get a Star Wars feel from this track with a hint of Naruto. It's awesome. Voice acting from both parties is great. Vader sounds ripped straight from the films, and Obito just has a great performance overall. I really like how menacing Vader is as a force in this fight. Obito is always on the back foot, which really plays into Vader as a fighter. Him casually cutting the spikes and breaking Obito's mask like that really sells the menacing stature of Darth Vader. The effects also help this a lot. As for complaints, yeah, the death is way too anticlimactic for my taste. I really like the character moment with Vader getting put to rest, but the slam is so unimpactful and lingers for way too long. It's like a casual slap. It's boring. And yeah, the conclusion is bad. I know a lot of people like to argue the verdict doesn't matter, because for some reason people think disagreeing with the verdict undermines the rest of the episode, which is just no. If you do only care about the verdict and don't care at all for the actual episode is when I have a problem, but having a disagreement with the episode while also still enjoying it is fine. Stop acting like it isn't. Anyway, yeah, I disagree with the result. Mainly just the arguments used don't make much sense to me. I really don't want to go into a full rant on how it's wrong, because that's not the purpose of this video. Nor do I really care enough to debate it with people. Looking at you, people in the comments. This episode was awesome. While it does have two negatives in terms of me not agreeing with the verdict and the death, it's still very, very, very awesome. Don't let that undermine any of the work put into this episode. So, I may have audibly groaned with Kill Sokka, but this was even worse. I lost my mind when I was first watching this with friends. My favorite Star Wars character got fodderized by Obito, and then this got announced. I know people really wanted this matchup, and if that happens to be you, I'm so glad you got the matchup you were excited for. Personally speaking, this was the least excited I've been for an episode all season. I had no interest in Raven coming back over any other Titan, and Phoenix I actively do not like. I think she's very oversaturated in X-Men stories. However, time has passed, and I'm going to give this another shot. So how is the episode now? Let's find out. This certainly is an episode of Death Battle Season 10. In terms of analysis, I guess I like them. They're not bad, but they also aren't great or anything. They just kind of exist. The music is good, the editing is good, but nothing stands out. It's not really funny to me or anything. As for the fight, it is really cool at points, and then the rest is surely an animation. When the preview first dropped, I really didn't like the sprite work of Raven and Phoenix, and yeah, that stands out to me still. Whenever Phoenix talks, it looks really weirdly positioned. This can also go for Raven in a few shots. There's also this whole bit where they are clashing in the air, and god, it does not look great. I get sprites can be limited, so it's not like a massive to the point where I hate the episode for it, but it does detract. I really don't like the dialogue toward the end. You have Phoenix using her friends for strength, and Raven is just, I am a daughter of Azeroth! What? Isn't the whole big thing that it's a Teen Titan versus X-Men match? Why couldn't she gain strength from her teammates, like Phoenix did? That's so weirdly written and poorly written at that. The track and hand-drawn elements are the best part of this episode. The track uses a lot of elements from the X-Men and Teen Titans themes, and the birds look really, really cool, along with the death. Yeah, I really have nothing to say here. It doesn't stand out to me, and it really isn't appealing at times. 5 out of 10. Guts vs. Demitri is really fucking special. I completely forgot about how good this episode was. The analysis for this episode especially I have to give props on. It treats both characters with utmost respect and doesn't use cheap jokes. For Guts' analysis, its standout was the music. It has this Berserk-like feel that I really appreciate. I also really like that they use a trigger warning for Berserk because man, does that story fucking need one. The cutaway gag with lifting the Dragon Slayer was funny. It doesn't disrespect the story at all. For Demitri, its standout was the editing. They go through so much, and again, that's like 70 fucking hours to beat. And there's some hidden jokes, too, that I really like. Like Amphibia being in the background, and oh my fucking god. Ert Gummer Tremors? Okay, yeah, this is the best analysis the entire season. Now, the fight is really where this episode shines in terms of character work. I'll try my hardest to describe why it's so good, but I'd highly recommend checking out GalacticAttorney's video on it. He goes way more in depth than I can pull off. This fight's animation is spectacular. It's very smooth and each hit feels very impactful. There's also really cool movement work, like when Guts casually evades the spears and dodges lightning. It also has really good effect work. I like how the fire and ice here looks. It's amazing. God's Hand as a track is very special, with lyrics that show both fighters' willingness to fight on, which is really reflected in the fight, with both quoting the "down to the last one" bit. And even after that, when Guts rises in the Berserker armor, literally fighting until the last drop of blood. The ending is also really good. I like that Demitri, even after a brutal, bloody fight, would respect Guts and fight on for him, facing the demon sealed within Guts. It's awesome. Like I said, I'd really check out GA's video on it, but this episode is really awesome and somewhat special to me, since it got me to check out Fire Emblem, which has been really, really fun. Oh, and if you like Fire Emblem content, go check out the fictional feud I worked on.
Episode is a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, so imagine my reaction with Phoenix vs. Raven, but instead of being mad or annoyed, I was just very, very bored. However, this episode actually started getting me hooked once the previews dropped. So how does this episode stand out today? Let's find out. The analysis for this episode were alright. Editing and use of story was good. I can't really say much because, to be frank, I don't really care about these characters, man. The fight is actually really interesting though, because the actual fighting is really boring to me, and a lot of it boils down to mind stuff and blasts, and it's not really interesting to watch. However, there's really cool stuff here, like Manhunter breaking the surfboard and becoming a dragon, which is really well hand-drawn. My only issue is that it doesn't last very long. The climax is where this fight shines though. A surfer is forced to kill a noble hero like Manhunter, and he doesn't know why. It really puts the question into why Death Battle happens if it ends up killing noble people. Surfer shedding a tear as he kills Manhunter is genuinely tear-jerking. It's a good ending, just kinda means little when you have an episode that doesn't do much to stand out. I hope that doesn't underplay the effort that goes into these episodes. I really just don't care about it. Sorry guys.
A talking triangle taking me on. Execute. I'm the undisputed lord of chaos. There's no room.
As the 2D Champions poll winner, Bill Cord had a lot to live up to, in terms of animation potential and analysis, given how negative My Little Pony's previous episodes were received, and how Gravity Falls is so beloved. Now, I didn't vote for this episode. I was completely on the Among Us sweep thanks to LarryWinWood's preview thingy, but this episode was always going to be hype, so I wasn't really disappointed with its announcement that it won. So did this episode live up to me and the community's hype? Fucking yes! It's Bill Cipher versus Discord. What did you expect? But clearly you want to hear my thoughts, if you're still watching this video by now. So, let's jump right in. Like I said earlier, this episode had a lot to live up to, in terms of scale and potential, and the team did masterfully on it. The analyses on both ends are just genuinely peak. The editing is top-notch on both ends, and really showcase the weirdness of both characters. Like the background just randomly changing colors, or Bill and Discord actually showing up for cutaway gags. I love Wiz being possessed by Bill. It's so unique from what we normally see with combatants who can break the fourth wall. Looking at you, Wade. And Discord poking fun at the animation team for not fully animating him and then turning Wiz and Boomstick into Ben and Chad is just genuinely hilarious. Side note, can we please have more Ben and Chad cameos? They're so fucking funny. There's also a lot of Easter eggs to other creators in both the analyses and fight. In Bill's segment, there's a list of names that show up, like Gumball Viking, EctoSpasm, CarbonatedJem, LarryWinWood, GalacticAttorney, and way more. They even have the Biff Weed car in the background of the fight. The best thing about the analysis is how fucking funny it is. Stuff like Bill saying "not for long" in reference to Discord having friends is just genuinely peak death battle. The funniest part of the analysis to me is easily the Denny's fiend. He better fucking come back, goddammit. Before I get into the fight, I'm also really happy they treat MLP way better than they do in their OG videos, because a lot of people were worried about that. Overall, great analysis. I genuinely have no fucking complaints. The fight is a masterpiece. That's not hyperbole, it just fucking is. The fight has a really good setup. Weird Mageddon taking place gives a good excuse for why Bill is at the peak of his power, because if you don't know, Bill can't use most of his power outside of Gravity Falls unless he's out of it. So it's an easy way to make that make sense. Discord having to fight to avenge his friends and stop Bill is a really good motivation. Him writing a letter to Celestia is really funny, but also calls back to the ending, so I'll cut back to that. The fighting in this episode is great. Stuff like Discord throwing ice cream at Bill or Bill firing lasers at him in midair is really neat. I also really like the bit where Bill and Discord use each other as little figurines. That always got a laugh out of me and still has on rewatch. The hand-drawn shit in this episode is awesome, by the way. The ice cream and hand look amazing. And then you have Discord that looks just straight out ripped from MLP. It's top-notch stuff. The little segment where they go through the madness bubbles and go through different art styles is really cool. You can really tell how much effort they put into each one. My only slight problem, and I mean very slight, is that it does kind of drag and actually takes away from the fighting. They can do so much and they only really touch a small fraction. Not that I blame them though, it's a huge matchup and there's so much they can do. It's probably hard to just pick which ones you want to use and stick to it, and it's hard to do everything. The ending is just genuinely amazing. Discord trying to replicate Bill's death only to be caught genuinely caught me off guard on my first viewing. But Discord turns it around, revealing the entire time they were in a fake dimension, trapping Bill once again. You see Fluttershy reading Discord's letter, which shows how committed he was to his friends to the bitter end. He really did teach Bill a lesson, causing him to laugh as Bill kills him. Genuinely just peak storytelling. It shows so much respect for Discord as a character. He may be silly, yes, but he truly cares about his friends. Bill won the fight, but Discord won the war. This episode leading up to its release faced massive controversy in the Death Battle server to the point where it had to literally be muted and locked because it was that toxic debate-wise. So I'm not going to touch on whether I agree with the verdict or not, because honestly, it's annoying to talk about. 10 out of 10 episode. Even with my hype slowing down over time, I still think it is a work of genius. So I'm going to be very real for a second. This matchup winning the 3D Champions poll was very disappointing to me. I'm going to be frank, not a fan of this matchup. I think it's very lame, and it was an episode that should have happened nearly a decade ago, if not an actual decade ago. It also was the reason Kratos vs. Ashura lost in the first poll. One of my top 10 most wanted matchups. So I went into this episode with a very negative outlook. Now, I still gave the episode a chance, given how a lot of my other friends were decently hyped about it. So how do I feel about it now? Let's talk about it. This episode always confused me. I always loved the fight, always hated the analyses, and yeah, that didn't change on rewatch. The analyses are genuinely some of the worst Death Battle has ever done, period. They are so goddamn unfunny. Jokes like Shadow the Hedgehog or fucking Kirby Linkin Park are so stupid. The main reason why they included these jokes was because, oh, it's an old script from 2013. Like, that at all justifies it to me. My main problem with that whole concept is that it treats the matchup and the champions who voted for it like a joke. At least that's how it came across to me. I know Ben and the team in the cast have said that they really didn't hate making this episode, but it really comes across that way when you watch the analyses. It's literally nothing but unfunny joke after unfunny joke. And if that works for you, I'm happy for you. But for me and my friend group, we really didn't vibe with it. But the fight, man, what a great time. The animation is clean as hell. Stuff like Cole riding the tentacles or doing the ring around the rosy on Alex's head is so clean. Him jumping from copter to copter is just genuinely awesome. The characters are also portrayed in a way that feels very faithful. Cole is heroic, but also feels straight up ripped from Infamous 2. Definitely sold by the performance. And Alex is edgy and actually terrifying in moments, like in the office building where he consumes the guy. It's really cool. And man, I fucking love that climax. The music getting quieter as Alex has Cole trapped, only for Cole to use his electricity around him to blast Alex as the music hits its peak is so awesome. The final clash is so cool and has some of the coolest shots I've ever seen in a death battle. The death, while subtle, has actual chills when Cole says, "good idea." Genuinely one of the best 3D episodes this season. It's a banger of a fight. Like I said, what really holds this episode back is the analysis. It really just doesn't work for me. I'm feeling generous as I'm writing this, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, but it could go lower depending on how I'm feeling. This was an interesting reveal, to say the least. Years prior, Nemesis Bloodrag made a video detailing why he disliked this matchup, which led to a lot of controversy as to if and or when it would happen. It totally caught me off guard this season. So how does it stand? See what I did there? Let's find out. This episode analysis-wise feels very weird, because I really like Frieza's analysis. It goes into what he was based off of in his creation and has really good editing. It's not special, but it's very good. Megatron also has good editing, but it seems to really underplay Megatron as a character in my opinion. Nearly every time they go into his actual character, it gets underplayed with a stupid joke. Like how you can transform into a gun, or he's a toy, guys! Which would be fine if it was placed at points that felt more natural to me. It's not bad, it just doesn't really play into Megatron in my opinion. The fight, on the other hand, is great. Devil Artemis animated this one in Blender, and it looks spectacular. The models look handcrafted, even though to my knowledge they aren't, and Cybertron looks amazing. The animation is actually really smooth too. No movement feels unnatural. The best thing about this fight is how much abilities are used. Frieza gets his transformations and his key attacks, while Megatron gets to use his Energon Mace, the shield bubble thingy, and antimatter. Another great aspect of this fight is the dialogue, mainly on Megatron's end. Every bit of dialogue from him sounds so Megatron and has this bit of spite and hatred to it that I love. Frieza's voice actor was alright. It's kinda to be expected with most Team 4-star actors. Oh, and before I move on to negatives, the track is amazing. Final Former stands on its own very well, and I've listened to it on a few occasions. The main negative about this episode to me is that the victor seems so obvious by the time Megatron's analysis ends, and that's not really fun when this matchup can be very debatable. They just don't use Megatron's best stuff, which kinda sucks. Good episode, just not one I particularly love in comparison to other episodes this season. 8 out of 10.
Defying the darkness to see the light.
Oh boy. Okay, so a little background before I begin my review. Gojo vs. Makima was my most wanted death battle for a good while before it was announced. Ever since the cast, I fell in love with it, and it really inspired me to check out Jujutsu Kaisen, which is solidly my second or third favorite manga of all time, in which Satoru Gojo is my favorite character, if not my favorite character of all time. I really resonate with his story and who he is. Chainsaw Man, on the other hand, I had already seen beforehand, thanks to the anime, in which, I'm gonna be honest, I do not like Makima, but that's the point. She's supposed to be unlikable. But I love Chainsaw Man as a series. Denji is a great protagonist, and every other side character is really cool to me. So when this episode was announced, I was very, very excited. I was fully rooting Gojo, but was betting Makima, and I was very, very, very hyped for each preview as they dropped. So how does it stand up? Let's take a look. Gojo vs. Makima is very special to me as an episode. Everything about it I absolutely fucking love, analysis and fight-wise. For the analyses, DJ Tiki did the editing, and man did he fucking cook. The use of manga panels every time they show up are eye candy. The movements, the highlights, they're just really appealing to look at. And every time the panels are used, they're clear and easy to read, which is really good when Death Battle is probably the first time a good few people are learning about this series. The jokes also land. Boomstick saying born different and walking away in fear from Wiz after his statement about God is really funny. Wiz maniacally laughing over math is also hilarious to me. Also, they have Gojo gritty in the pre-fight, so, peak? This fight is fucking phenomenal. The setup is great. Makima being at the theater with dead combatants in the background is really cool, and fits because Makima loves the theater. Gojo popping in and being as obnoxious as fucking possible is hilarious and very in character. Then the actual fighting begins, and both characters get to use a lot of their arsenal. Makima gets to use a lot of her contracts like the Flamethrower Devil, Zombies, etc., while Gojo uses Red and Blue, Hollow Purple, and Domain Expansion. The track is great too. Who Wears the Crown feels very action heavy, and I love it. All of the combat is really carried by the performances. Gianni Matrigano as Gojo really sells his show-off persona and how serious he can get when the time calls for it. Kelsey J. Fur sells Makima's stone-cold nature and how she barely ever emotes, and when she does, she really plays it. Her laugh and scream really fits the character in my opinion. Which actually brings me to this episode's biggest complaint. Makima's characterization. I've made a Twitter thread back when the episode came out, but I'll reiterate it here. Makima was in character. She has shown emotion before, pretty blatantly too. Like when she was at the theater or laughed in front of Denji. People like to nitpick and go, well, Denji's a special case because he is so strong due to his ability to eat people and erase them from existence, and how he was basically born different in the Chainsaw Man world. So she had to break him down significantly. When she did, she found it very funny because he was miserable and also because she succeeded. And I counter this by saying that the death battle conclusion 1-to-1 compares Denji and Gojo, and say that due to how different Gojo is in terms of power in his own world, and how his blatant existence causes people around him to fear him, he would be similar to Denji in Makima's eyes. So she wouldn't be able to control him right away, and would have to break him down as well, which she does by hitting Bang, causing genuine fear in Gojo's eyes, which she would absolutely find hilarious, like how she felt with Denji. While I can agree the laugh could be toned down, it is not out of character. Saying it is false. As for the scream, Makima most of the time only ever stays silent when she is hit because she can transfer the attack. She can't escape Domain Expansion or Hollow Purple, nor transfer it, so she would still feel the pain of being atomized to zero, giving actual reason for her to scream because of the agonizing pain that would be. It's not like Makima has never felt pain. That was never explicitly stated or shown. The discussion on this topic alone has been the most annoying shit ever, because people can't just accept when they're wrong, and I know for a fact most people said this because Makima lost, and that's so sad. I had people call me biased and stalk my page on Twitter because I disagreed with them, being incredibly rude despite how respectful I was in that thread. But regardless, they can't really change my love of this episode, and it's a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. People who disagree can argue with the void. I really don't fucking care. This was a dream matchup for me. People will call me biased no matter what I would say, but I don't really care. Thank you everyone at the DB team who made this so special for me, even if it wasn't intentional. My dream matchup was so good. A surprising reveal, to say the least. I did not expect it at all, but boy, what a fun surprise. Luis really hyped this one up, since it's sort of a spiritual successor to Afro Samurai vs. Jack, which is a really good episode. There was also the fact that my friend, Galaxy Video Max, got hired to edit for this episode, and future ones too, which was really exciting to me given how Max cooked on Pinhead vs. the Tall Man for a multiverse match. He also had this matchup as one he really wanted to see. So everything leading up to this episode was extremely hype. Does it hold up now that it's been out for a while? Let's talk about it. This episode is really special in the fact that it's so unique for an episode nobody expected to happen this season. The analyses for this episode are a treat, or should I say a Scooby snack. For Scooby's analysis, they really play into the absurdity of Scooby-Doo stories, starting off with the more normal grounded mask-wearing villains to actual zombies and convincing a clown to reconsider his life, which actually got a chuckle out of me. For Courage's analysis, they play into the pure weirdness and strange tales of the series, listing all of his villains, including the scariest one of all, the US government. Bum bum bum. Both analyses are really funny. Mama Boomstick showing up for a cutaway and text in both analyses about what they've done for a Scooby snack and love, respectively, is absolutely a treat and comes across as pure love for both series. This fight is fucking phenomenal. This is another episode hand-drawn by Luis and a few other animators, with some really unique blending, and they do a fantastic job. The background of a haunted mansion is actually really eerie and fits the tone of both series and the fight itself. I really like that Scooby and Courage barely actually fight, and when they do it so the other will handle the threat. It's cartoony in a perfect way. Voice acting from both parties also sell this. Edward Bosco as Courage is genuinely perfect casting. He just sounds straight up ripped out of the show. And Billy as Scooby is really good from what we get to hear of him. Liam also gets to play the computer, which is really funny. The scene where Courage goes to all the doors is comedic genius. I love me some bad Mr. Frosty and the scariest thing of all, Columbo. I really like that this episode doesn't end in either dying. Call it contrived all you want, I don't care, it's so sweet. That little bitch Eustace deserved it. This episode is really special. If you haven't seen it, please go do so. The entire team could. I'm so happy it's this good. 10 out of 10. Okay, so take everything I felt about Gojo Kima in terms of hype, but add a sci-fi edge to it. Rick vs. the Doctor was literally tied with Gojo Kima as one of my most wanted matchups. I literally got my 2 most wanted matchups nearly back to back. Rick and Morty I have a weird connection with because I got introduced to it and loved it for a while and then fell off, which luckily this episode's announcement has made me check it out again. I still love it despite those episodes. If you know, you know. Doctor Who I got into when I was in 1st grade, and I love it a whole lot. Tennant and Matt Smith were my goats, although I kind of fell off during the Capaldi era. But like Rick and Morty, this episode made me check it out again. And man, it's still so fucking great. That and Max was back on the edit, which made me really hyped, especially since Max had this as one of his most wanted matchups. So how does it stand as an episode? I'd say it's pretty damn good. Let's get into it. The analyses for this episode are really fun. They begin by going into their respective combatants' companions and explain how they first meet Rick and the Doctor. For Rick's analysis, I really like the panel usage. I didn't expect shit this good for Max on his solo outing, but I loved it. They also go really well into Rick's character, despite how the internet portrays him as a walking meme. He actually has a tragic character. Also, defeated the president is a really funny gag. The Doctor's analysis is a standout of the season. It goes into how wacky Doctor Who is with its enemies, including Hitler. Jokes about the Doctor being British is also really funny. Really fits a certain someone who likes this matchup. The fight for this one is really fun. It's by the RT team and it really sells the art style of both characters. The setup is good and feels ripped straight out of both shows. Rick being this pissy because the Doctor doesn't care is really funny. The dialogue fits both very well, which I think the actors also sell well. I'm not huge on Rick's VA, but it definitely works fine enough. The Doctor VA, however, brilliant. Actually brilliant. He just sounds straight up like David Tennant. You know, the Duke of Scotland from the Peak House? This episode nails characterization. I'm not the first to point this out, but the entire fight is Rick instigating stuff. The Doctor doesn't try and kill him or anything directly, because the Doctor doesn't do that. It's really neat. This fight is really fun. While it's not my favorite of the season, it's still really good. Just kinda outclassed by other 10 out of 10s this season. Hoo boy. Goku vs. Superman has had a weird period on Death Battle, and that is a massive understatement. With the original classic coming out in 2013, leaving a lasting impression of Death Battle that still lingers to this day. That they're biased and hate Goku, and despite the team on numerous occasions showing they love Goku way more than Superman, they are fucking biased. Then the irrelevant sequel came out in 2015, and we don't talk about that one. But I will. This episode ruined people's interpretations of Superman, and I will stick by that till the day I die. Portraying Superman as an unstoppable force that can never be relatable. Someone who's not meant to lose, which is so stupid to me. Clark Kent is a symbol of kindness, an alien who was raised as a simple boy with manners and a strong sense of justice. Clark Kent would do anything and everything for his city and the people he cares about. But all because of this sequel, people started treating Supes as a god who couldn't ever be an actually well-written character, and I hate that episode for it. So when this episode was announced, I was very, very uneager and disappointed for it. I didn't want Supes to be treated so poorly again, but the preview started coming out, and wow, that quickly turned me around. Now that it's been out, how does this episode do? Does it dethrone the OG and its peak? Let me explain. Peak episode. No, peak show. No, scratch that. Peak everything. Goku vs. Superman is a one-time event that will never be replicated again. It is so fucking good. The analyses for this episode really go in depth on how the characters have surpassed their simple creations to become the strongest they need to for their friends and family. Goku has continually broken his limits time and time again, despite how his beginnings were so humble. He's a symbol of hope for the Saiyan race and protector of humanity, but he's also a simple guy who loves to have fun and give it his all. The music plays into this too, with some really epic theming to fit Goku and Dragon Ball as a series. Superman started as a symbol of kindness in a time when kindness was very much not pushed for, becoming a symbol of heroism that continues to show, despite how immensely powerful you may be. You are not above anyone and should treat everyone with kindness every day. The editing is top notch, which is crazy to me because DJ, the main editor of this episode, spent 3 all-nighters while also working on his college thesis. Actual fucking madman. It really paid off. Max also helped on this episode. It was great work all around. This fight, man, I can't even fucking start. Where do I start? The fight setup is so good. Both sparring going all out in such a friendly manner is so in character for both. There's no malice, no hatred, just pure unadulterated fun. The VA sell this immensely. Michael Kovac as Goku sells his happy but strong attitude, and Xander Mobus as Soup sells his pure kindness with every line. That was pretty fun. It's a genuinely tear-jerking line given how horribly he was portrayed in GVS2. They even have the "Mom made it for me" line, which is amazing. I'm so happy about that. The fighting itself is also really cool and well animated. There is some jank, but it's not too noticeable and honestly helps the fight in a way. It, along with the SFX, makes it really feel like a Dragon Ball fight. Super is a peak track and just the best of the season, which is wild to me. This episode is truly special, a shining example of how Death Battle can cover characters with importance and meaning. I love it so much. 11 out of 10. Call me cheesy, I do not fucking care. Argue with the void.
Let's go again.
You're on.
This is a big boy. A really, really big boy. Galactus vs. Unicron reigns as the most requested death battle ever. The team said so themselves, being built up and hyped for years. So it was only a matter of time before it happened. Now, me personally, don't care for it. It's not a bad matchup, I think it makes sense, but I'm not huge on Galactus as a character, and Transformers I have very little exposure to. I've seen the first of the War for Cybertron trilogy, and that's about it. So I'm going into this with absolutely no bias whatsoever. How does this episode hold up compared to the rest of the season? Let's see. This episode is really interesting to talk about. The analyses for this episode I'm mixed on. Personally speaking, not huge into Galactus' rundown. The music just doesn't work for me. It's very dull and boring to listen to in the background. The jokes are also just not very funny. The biggest issue I have is that a lot of this feels like another Silver Surfer rundown, since you're covering a lot of the same stuff. However, what Galactus' analysis does right is storytelling. It goes into how Galil has lost his humanity over time to become a reckless planet-eating monster who lacks emotion. It's a tragedy if you really think about it. Unicron's analysis, on the other hand, holy shit. What a massive improvement from Megatron's. The jokes aren't cheap or annoying, and they actually treat Transformers seriously. Unicron is actually portrayed as a threat, which is wonderful. They really sell how menacing and powerful Unicron is, much to the point that Wiz and Boomstick even fear him. The editing is also pretty good. I like the usage of panels when they're relevant, and they have good music. Definitely one of my favorite analyses this season. The fight I am very mixed on. For the positives, this fight looks gorgeous. From start to end, the cosmic structures, the models, it all just works. Every beam clash, every power used, it looks so beautiful. Definitely the best effect work all season. The setup is also really good and just fits. Them fighting over a planet is just too in character for both. Then there's the stuff I'm mixed on. The voice acting isn't bad by any means, and I think Unicron is genuinely a highlight of the season, but Galactus doesn't work for me. He's not bad, but there's just nothing to his performance, at least in my opinion. The track is also just aight. I'm not huge on it, but it's not bad either. It works for the cosmic setting of the fight. The main thing holding this fight back is that ending. The fake out feels so worthless. It goes by too quickly before Galactus just reforms and erases Unicron, which is just really lackluster for a finale kill. I can't really excuse it either, since this episode has been beautiful the entire way through. Why couldn't you do a more bombastic, beautiful death, as opposed to, he gets erased, GG. It's just kind of boring. This is a very good finale. However, the things like the ending and Galactus' analysis keeps this from being a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. This finale is definitely a very high 9 out of 10. And that was Death Battle Season 10. Definitely one of the best seasons of the show so far. Do I prefer it over Season 8? I think so, yeah. This probably just is the definitive season of Death Battle. So here's my ranking of the season. Next season is going to be a very interesting one for sure, with Tomcat vs. Wile E. Coyote winning the tournament, which will definitely be a fun one for sure, albeit I'm a little sad Creature lost. Hopefully we still get it soon. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. It took a long time working on this. I started work on it ever since Friezatron's release, and it's been a very fun time going through all these episodes. Let me know if you guys want me to do this again next year, or with previous seasons. And if you want some more cool shit, go check out some of these awesome folks in the description. Bye-bye!
Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I don't know